If you can't trust yourself to get something done, how can God trust you to get something done? See, He told you to do something, but you don't trust yourself to get it done because you can't even trust what you said you would do yourself. And I said this a few videos ago. When was the last time you betrayed yourself? You said you were going to do something, but you didn't do it. You can't trust yourself, so how the hell is God supposed to trust you? A lot of people don't understand that fundamental aspect. You expect God to trust you with a wife, but you aren't even becoming a better husband. God will see how integral you are when you become a husband, when there is, and this is the faith aspect of it too. Faith has to be met with integrity. How are you becoming a better husband when there is no guarantee of you getting a wife? One of the biggest things I've learned in writing and publishing books and marketing them and making a few sales here and there in the last few weeks, and it made me feel a certain type of way because I didn't have to trade my time for this. I didn't have to work hours and hours. I wrote the book, obviously, but through one video of speaking for 40 seconds, I got sales. One thing it taught me, and it made me feel different because I earn my own money with the least amount of effort, and that's the way I learned about business. The one thing I learned was it's about how you speak and how you communicate, right? And a huge part of that is, can you show up when there are no guaranteed results? Because that's integrity, and that will show you. So sometimes you need to pick up a project where there are no guaranteed results. Why? Because it forces you to become the guarantee. It forces you to create the guarantee. So right now, as I'm learning in business, is I have to become the guarantee. If I can't promise a guarantee, I have to become the guarantee. And then the guarantee comes. And that's what I just saw a few weeks ago when I got the most sales a few weeks ago. I became the guarantee for my own business. And that gave me confidence because now I can trust myself on another level. Now, what does God have to say about this? Here's the thing. Even though I know I was supposed to talk about bibliolatry and stop with the sin gospel part 2, that's all coming. Don't worry. That's in the next few weeks. It's coming. And hopefully it'll be in Huntington Lake. But we'll see. A lot of people have a scarcity mindset as a perspective, right? I just spoke about perspective. If your perspective is you can only find God in the Bible, and He only exists in church, and He only exists in the Bible, you're not going to see Him outside. You're not going to see the opportunity to see God outside of the Bible. The way Moses saw Him in a burning bush. The way Moses spoke to Him face to face on top of the mountain. You won't be able to see God the way Abraham saw God. You won't be able to see God the way David saw God. And it means you have to open up your mind. Yes, does God exist in the Bible? Absolutely. It's documented. But I will say this. When the Bible was being written, and all these historical accounts were being written and formulated. So something for you to keep in mind is, for it to be written in the Bible, it had to be an experience. And it's all leading you to a deeper experience, and a experience based off of a relationship you have with God for yourself. And a lot of people don't realize that. So when the Bible is telling you that Moses saw a burning bush and he started talking to God, it's because it's trying to show you that you can formulate your own relationship with God and talk to God outside of the Bible. And that means you need to have a deep perspective of how you can see Jesus in the Old Testament too. I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was talking about how I feel about Islam and Islam immigration and stuff. And I was like, I don't agree with a whole lot of it, because even the UAE minister came forth and said he doesn't want left-wing erratic wild Muslims going out on immigration because of the tolerance that governments are showing. And I told him, I agree with it completely, but a lot of conservatives don't actually know what Islam is, and if you become violent towards them, you're never going to preach the gospel to them, because they have the same legalistic mindset that a lot of the church has. So you need to break the legalistic mindset, because if you meet legalism with legalism, Islam will defeat you, because their entire religion preaches discipline. But if you preach love instead of legalism, you'll defeat legalism, just the way Jesus defeated the Pharisees with every argument. And speaking about that, because even when I was watching a podcast with PBD and he brought two ex-Islam converts and two Islam reverts, from politically correct term is revert, is the Islam people, the Muslim people were used to be have a Christian background, used to have a Christian background, and the Christian people used to have an Islamic background. So when he brought both of them together, they kept bringing out the Old Testament. And if you want to bring out Old Testament arguments, you have to bring a Jewish person, not a Christian, because a Christian person is always going to bring the gospel back to Jesus Christ. Why? Because if you have seen me, you have seen the Father. I have not done anything that I haven't seen the Father do. And that's why we think about the Old Testament the wrong way, because the Old Testament needs to be met with a perspective of who Jesus is. And that's why Jesus says, no, you've heard it said eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, but I tell you, you've heard it said that committing adultery is wrong, but I tell you, if you look at a woman in a lustful manner, you've already committed it. So he's raising the standard, and he's saying the way you think about the law, the way you interpreted the law was wrong. So that's why I'm going to give you a new command that supersedes all commands. And it's interesting to hear what a command actually is. It's not something you're supposed to follow. It's something you follow out of your own appreciation for it, right? Your dad commands you to do something, you do it out of love and respect for him. You don't do it because rules always have consequences to them. But a command doesn't have that much of a consequence. It's, if you choose to follow it, it's your choice. If you choose not to follow it, you're subject to your own consequences because of your willful ignorance. Now, why do I talk about the Pharisees in this regard, and why Jesus defeated the argument that most of the Pharisees made? Here's the interesting thing. You want to know what Jesus talks about in terms of integrity? You have the parable of the 5 talents, right? Or the parable of the talents. One person gets 5, the other person gets 2, and the one person gets 1, right? 5 makes 10, 2 makes 4, 1 burrows it down into the ground. So that's not integrity at all. Safekeeping is not integrity. True integrity is how you can maximize the benefit of something you're given. Now, the other aspect of integrity is also seen in how Jesus talks about the shepherd going after the sheep. The one sheep, he leaves the 99 to go after that one sheep. That's integrity. Now, another aspect of integrity spoken about in the Bible is always going to be the one story that Jesus shares about how a vineyard owner entrusts his entire vineyard to a bunch of people, right? And I'm going to break down the story for you. He entrusts it to a bunch of workers, and he goes away for a trip. Now, when he goes on for the trip, he says, okay, I'm going to go collect my revenues. I'm going to send someone to do it. And time again, he sends servants to go collect that. Who were those servants? The prophets. They tried to warn the people of the vineyard, what became the priests and the priestly class, the Pharisees. He sent his own managers, right, to go and say, I need the returns for this. Where are the results of the work you've been putting in? And they would torment. So that's the story of all the prophets. You have Daniel, you have Jeremiah. Jeremiah is known as the weeping prophet for a reason. You have Samuel, you have all these people, right? All the prophets were tormented because they were being sent by God to check on the vineyard. And then Jesus talks about how the vineyard owner sends his own son, thinking that they'll respect him. But instead, they kill the son. So instead of beating and torturing, they resort to killing the son. And what is Jesus talking about? How God sent his own son to fix the vineyard. And then he said, now what do you think the vineyard owner is going to do? He's actually going to take matters into his own hands and treat them and reclaim the vineyard and put people in charge that are actually valuable to it. So it's not going to be the Pharisees anymore. It's not people who are led by legalism, but people who are led by love. And that talks about an integrity. The lack of integrity means that God can't trust you with something, because You're basically killing the people that are sent to just deliver a message and ask for the fruits of something that you are doing in order to honor God. And that's why, like, integrity is a big thing for me. I haven't ever told people how I cherish integrity, and I think I should, because when I talk about like this parable that Jesus talks about, the reason it hits home for me, and last night I was thinking about it too, is yeah, we haven't taught churches or pastors to be integral at all. Like, oh yeah, here's a church, here's a bunch of people to disciple and mentor and take care of their spiritual life and their walk with God, but there are no results. Integrity always proves in the results. The results is society, results is culture, results are the individuals that your integrity creates.